everybody, welcome to another exciting episode of Chilling3000 Hangouts. Happy 4th of July. Hope everybody's having a great 4th of July today. Spending time with their loved ones, watching the fireworks and all that good stuff. Today on this episode, we have two great interviews for you all. Starting off with the AAA Rochester Red Wings baseball announcer, Josh Whetzel. And right after that, we have our interview with game show expert, Jeff Williams. So hope you all are looking forward to those interviews tonight. And without further ado, let's begin our first interview with Josh right now. Alright everybody, I'm here today with a special guest for this interview segment. He is the AAA announcer for the Rochester Red Wings, which is the AAA affiliate of the Washington Nationals. Please welcome Josh. How are you doing, Josh?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So, how did you get into announcing for the Rochester Red Wings? For don't know.
Well, it's been I've been at it for a long time. I grew up in a little town in Kansas and started working at a radio station in my hometown when I was in junior college. And then after graduating from the University of Kansas, I got a job at a radio station where I broadcast summer college baseball for a team in the Jayhawk League. And I always wanted to broadcast baseball games and send out tapes at that time, actual cassette tapes, to teams with samples of my work, hoping to get a job, and wound up landing a job in minor league baseball in Albany, Georgia. And I've worked for minor league baseball teams ever since then.
Very cool. What was the amount of experience you needed just to get to minor league baseball?
Well, again, it was based a lot on what my tapes sounded like, how I got hired initially with the Albany Polecats. And then, I was in Albany for 1 year. Our team got sold and moved, and all of us lost our jobs. So I had to get another job. Worked at a little radio station in a town in Nebraska for a few months after that. But fortunately, I didn't miss a baseball season because I landed a job in Kinston, North Carolina, with a team that doesn't exist anymore either, the Kinston Indians. And I worked for them for 4 years. And after 4 years in Kinston, I got a job in Binghamton, New York, with the Mets AA team, at that time called the Binghamton Mets. And then from Binghamton, I found out the job in Rochester had opened up after the 2002 season, and sent my materials here to Rochester. And fortunately, they liked my stuff well enough that I got hired here.
Very cool. With the Rochester Red Wings, how many years you've been doing this for either radio or TV, or is it one or the other?
Yeah, my first year here was 2003. So this is I think my 22nd season since there wasn't a season in 2020. So I believe it's 22 seasons. Long time.
Oh yeah, I was actually born in 2003, October 14th. So that is the very long time indeed. And you do both TV and radio, or just radio or TV?
We don't really have any TV games now. Obviously, you can watch the games on stream, a video stream, but that's with me doing a radio call. So if you see if you see a video, it's just the radio call that's laid over the video.
Yeah, I know what you mean with the minor league baseball TV app. For those who love baseball, both Major League and minor league, I suggest you guys check out the minor league baseball app. It's a great app that has all of the minor league teams, and I think some teams do it TV, because I know the Hartford Narcos do it on TV. I know the Blue Sox do it on TV. It's very interesting how they run things. But do you also do any games remotely? Because I know in the major leagues, the Angels and I think the Blue Jays do it remotely for the away games. Do you ever do remote games?
Fortunately, I don't. Yeah, fortunately, I go to
Okay.
all the games home and road, and I don't have to deal with that. I had to do some remote broadcasts during COVID for the University of Buffalo basketball team that I broadcast games for.
Okay.
So I didn't go on the road that season, and did games from my kitchen table, watching the stream and doing it that way, and that worked out okay because basketball is one sport where you can kind of pull that off. But
Yeah.
yeah, fortunately, I haven't had to do that for baseball because I think that would be very, very difficult.
Yes. No. You can't really even like. It's very. It's a huge difference in person and on the screen. Like it's a small little thing, you know. But I don't know where you're coming from. I was doing some research here, and you are a cancer survivor, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh wow! Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, my going into my senior year of high school in the summer, before my senior year, I got diagnosed with what they called ganglioneuroblastoma. So I had a big tumor in my chest, and I wound
Oh,
up having a couple of surgeries and had a bunch of rounds of chemotherapy and radiation, and a lot of different things happened to me. But fortunately, over the course of the next year and a half during that time, it it basically resolved itself. I had a surgery that removed the tumor completely, along with all of my right lung. So I only have a left lung now. But yeah,
okay.
after about a year and a half of going through all that, it got taken care of, and fortunately, I'm still here today. But yeah, that was
Yeah,
certainly a scary thing to go through at that time.
I get it, and I know what it feels like to have surgeries in the hospital because it's just one no, especially in the summer as well. I'm not saying doesn't matter for any time of the year, but especially the summer, you're missing out your summer. Because that's the best time of the year. It's the summer for some people,
Hmm.
and just being there in the hospital is just, very, very, very sad situation and very expensive as well. So I'm glad that your health is in good shape nowadays, and
Yeah,
that's very good.
yeah.
How many years?
Fortunately, my parents had good insurance too, so but it would have been
Yeah,
super, super expensive. And I lived in like I said, a small town in Kansas, and a lot of the people in the community were very supportive and helped us out with different events to help us raise some money that helped pay for some things too. So yeah, we were very
yeah.
lucky in that regard also.
And how many years you've been a survivor? Okay.
Well, now, I mean, my last chemotherapy treatment was in I think late November, early December of 1990. So I mean, pretty
Okay.
long. So like, almost 35 years.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And what is what is your advice for those who are going through that right now as for battling cancer?
Well, I don't know if I have any great advice. It's just, just lean on your support system as much as you can, and try to be as
Hmm.
optimistic as possible. I don't know that I was always as optimistic as I could have been, but I had a really
Yeah,
great support group with my family and friends, and I leaned on them, and basically just did what the doctors told me to do, and just trusted that the people that were treating me knew what they were doing, which fortunately they did. And I was also fortunate that I was able to get looked at and treated by some really, really high end, top notch doctors who really did know what
yeah,
they were doing. So that helped out too.
understand. Um, let's talk about the Rochester Red Wings a little bit. Um, tell us of what you think of this team so far because they have been known for a couple years now of having a very good farm system. Uh, tell us some of the farm system and about the current AAA team right now, going to the second half almost.
Well, I mean, the record, indicates that we've really struggled. We have the worst overall
Yeah,
record in the International League right now, and It's been a tough year from a wins and losses standpoint. It's spring
training.
You
got swept. You got swept at Worcester.
Yeah. That was part of losing 12 games in a row. Because we got swept in Worcester and came back to Rochester and got swept by Jacksonville right after that. So it's been a tough year. And the funny thing is, when I went to spring training for a few days in mid-March, there were a lot of people that were optimistic that this was going to be a very good team. But then some people got hurt. Some people made the major league team that they didn't necessarily expect to, which is good for them. And it just hasn't panned out the way that I think the Red Wings and the Nationals would have hoped. But there have been some good individual performances and some guys that played their way to the big leagues, like Brady House, who's up with the Nationals right now. Robert Hassel and Dalen Lyle both got called up, and Lyle was back up there now again. So some players have performed well enough to get called up. It's just been too few and far between as far as those players are concerned. And they've had the biggest issue for the Red Wings overall has just been the bullpen has really, really struggled. They've been getting solid starting pitching now for the most, I would say, the majority of the season. Starting pitching has kept the team in games, but the bullpen has really, really struggled, and that's probably been the number one biggest thing they've had to try to overcome.
Yeah, and I completely forgot they were in that place, because as you can see, we just started the second half, so I can't really see I don't know how to look back at the first half standings. But when you think having this reset is going to be huge for Rochester going for the rest of the year, with going back to zero a few days ago, or do you think there's going to be like the same frustrating aim we saw in the first half?
Well, I think hopefully it's going to be a lot better. I mean, I'm glad they finally went to the split season of what it was about 3 years ago. For the longest time, they didn't have a split season in AAA baseball, whereas most of the other leagues in minor league baseball did have the split season. And fortunately, they made that change about 3 years ago, because the rosters in minor league baseball changed so much, and it just gives hope to some teams to have that first half. So I think the second half will likely be better than the first half. It's just a question of how much better. And you only need to look back to last year to find a team in this league that finished last in the first half, and then they won the second half. That's what happened last year with Columbus. As amazing as that turnaround is, I think it's going to be very difficult for the Red Wings to pull that off, but it happened last year, so we'll see if maybe they can get it going. Now, they had a very bad first series of the second half too. They just lost 5 to 6 games to Syracuse, so they better probably kick it into gear here pretty soon.
Yes, with the Red Sox to start $5 to the Yankees to play team as well. So anything can happen, especially at the trade deadline. I believe it's August or July or August 31st. But it's going to be interesting. Also, the MLB draft is also going to be coming about, could also change with it as well, I think. And what's your thoughts on James Wood in the major league so far since last year? Because a lot of people have been talking about him.
Well, I mean, I thought last year that after seeing him for a little bit of time, that he was a future superstar, and it's happened maybe quicker than I thought. He just amazed me last year from the start at how good he was, and not having seen him before last year, just going off his statistics, it really blew me away just how much he apparently improved from 2023 to 2024, and now he's improved a lot from 2024 to 2025. So, I think he's a possible future most valuable player type of guy. I think he's on pace right now to hit around 40 homers in what would be his first full year in the major leagues. And, Sunday against the Angels, they intentionally walked him 4 times, which is crazy. I mean, he's the guy that everybody on other teams are circling to try to make sure that he doesn't beat them, because he can be an absolute one-man wrecking crew in games. He's really something else.
Yeah, and that's great with Juan Soto. Really, really helped him out. Did you have any fun memories with Juan Soto when he was in with the Rochester?
Fun stories about who?
Juan Soto when he was.
He didn't play here. Yeah, he didn't play here.
Okay.
When he was coming through the minor leagues, in fact, he skipped AAA completely, and he only played about a week or two in AA. He basically went from A ball to the big leagues, but even at that time he was coming through. The Red Wings were affiliated with the Minnesota Twins, so yeah, he would not come through here anyway. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that. But yeah, that's crazy anyway that he went from AA all the way to Major League without even going to AAA. That's
like I said, he barely played in AA. I think he only played a handful of games in AA. Our manager, Matt LeCroy, was his manager in AA in Harrisburg. So he had him for a little bit of time, and but he was there very, very briefly before. I mean, he was 19 years old, when he got to the big leagues with the Nationals. So he got up there when he was really young.
That's crazy. What was your favorite memories of watching baseball growing up, and why did you want to go into broadcasting? From that being one of your favorite sports, growing up.
Baseball. My family was really into baseball. My dad was a big baseball fan. I had an uncle who played minor league baseball, and my dad and my uncle coached, Little League and American Legion ball and that sort of thing in my hometown. We watched baseball every night, whether it was, out at the local ballpark or watching games on TV, whatever. And, I think that's where it really spurred my interest. And I realized I wasn't probably going to be good enough to be a player at a level above high school. And then certainly the health issues prevented any of that anyway, because I couldn't play any sports at all my senior year. But I tagged along with the local sports play-by-play announcer of the little radio station in my hometown, became friends with him, and that kind of led to me getting the opportunity to work at the radio station in my hometown when I was in junior college, and that's kind of where it started.
Okay.
But football, I don't think I had only been to maybe one or two minor league games in my life before I got a job in minor league baseball. I went to a few major league games growing up, but I think I only went to one or two minor league games ever before I got my first minor league baseball job.
Did you have a favorite minor league stadium on the road from your times at in any of the levels?
Yeah, I really like. There's a lot of good ones in the International League right now. My favorite is probably Indianapolis, Victory Field. All of the ballparks in the old IL West. The IL West doesn't really exist anymore, but the old IL West was Indianapolis, Toledo, Louisville, and Columbus, and all four of those ballparks are fantastic. Charlotte's really great. Polar Park in Worcester is really good. So probably those four in the old IL West, Charlotte and Worcester would be probably the best ones in the International League, I would say. But for me, Indianapolis is the top of the heap, probably. And Charlotte's view is so good. I mean, we don't play Charlotte very much, but the view from the ballpark in Charlotte is incredible, because you've got the big downtown skyline right there beyond the ballpark. I think my top three would probably be Indianapolis, Charlotte, and Columbus.
Okay, very cool. Ballpark is very amazing because is, but you can walk around watching the game. Like you have the bird, you have the monster, you have the train in the background.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. With me, it's very special to me because I was born in Worcester, so able to with that being 20 minutes away from me, I can easily go there. It's very awesome. And also another cool ballpark from our league, as we said, is I can name you two. The one in New Hampshire, the Cats, and the one in Hartford, the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
Those are also two very cool minor league ballparks. Haven't been to both of those two before.
What's that?
Haven't been to both Hartford and New Hampshire before, and same with Portland for the Sea Dogs. I forgot about that one.
Portland is good. I was in that league for 3 years, but Hartford was still in New Britain at that point. New Hampshire was not in the league, and Portland was in the league. But I know they've changed the ballpark quite a little bit since I was there. I used to really like Portland, though. It was good. The ballparks in the International League are a little better in my opinion. But I have heard great stuff about Hartford. I know Hartford is a really tough place though to broadcast games because they put the radio booths down the line, which stinks. So it's a great ballpark, but it's a very difficult place for the broadcasters to do games. So that's the one that would be a big drawback there for me.
Understood. Not as a broadcaster, but as a fan. Have you been to Fenway Park? As a fan going to the game.
Have I been to Fenway?
Yeah.
Have I? Yeah. I've been to. I've seen one game there as a fan, and then I also did a game there when they used to do something called Futures at Fenway, and the first year they did that, which I think was in 2006. The Red Wings played the Pawtucket Red Sox at Fenway Park, and it was a phenomenal experience. That was a time when the Red Sox were really drawing like crazy. They had a long streak of sellouts, and they played a doubleheader that day. The Lowell played, I think, Oneonta before the Red Wings played the Paw Sox, and it was a beautiful day. I can't remember it was late in the season, but it was a beautiful day. And there were 30,000 people at Fenway Park for it. So that was really, really cool. That was really cool. So that was I had already seen a game there in the big leagues. And in 2001, I saw a game at Fenway Park. So that was in 2006. We played that game there. That was cool.
Very cool. And I see that you also, there's a national showcase of the minor league All-Star games back in 2009, 95, and 98. I believe that, if I'm correct in that. So it's very cool that you can get to see future stars, from those events. It's pretty awesome. Do you have one favorite player that you called to those special games that got to be a superstar in the major leagues?
Well, just in general in Rochester, I mean, we've had a lot of good players come through here, and actually the first team I ever worked for in the minor leagues, the Albany Polecats, in 1995 in Albany, Georgia. Vlad Guerrero was the best player on the team, and then Vlad wound up being being a Hall of Famer. So the first team I ever worked for, there was a Hall of Famer on the team, unbeknownst to everybody at the time. But in Rochester, we've had a lot of really good players during our Twins era. Justin Morneau and Francisco Liriano was incredible when he played here, pitched here. Jose Barrios, now the Blue Jays, was great. And then with the Nationals now, the fact that James Wood came through here, and I've said, I think James Wood has the chance to be the best former Red Wing major league player since Cal Ripken Jr. played here in 1981. Now, whether that'll be true or not, I don't know, but I think he certainly has the potential to be that. So I'm anxious to follow his career and hopefully that he does have that kind of career. That'd be something else.
Absolutely. Do you have a favorite Major League Baseball team and all-time player as well growing up?
I grew up a Dodgers fan, even though I grew up in Kansas. It was kind of like a family tradition. My
Okay.
dad and his brothers had been Dodgers fans, and so the Dodgers were my favorite team. And my first favorite player was Davey Lopes, who's actually from
Huh.
Rhode Island. He was a second baseman, played for a long time, and Davey Lopes was my favorite player growing up. Now, the funny thing is with the Red Wings, a player on our team is Darren Baker, whose dad, Dusty Baker,
That's
was on
right.
those Dodgers. He was on those Dodgers teams that I really grew up
Yeah.
rooting for. And now, I've gotten to know Dusty a little bit because he's come to see Darren play on numerous occasions now the last couple of years. So that's been pretty
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I was so glad that Dusty finally got his swing back in 2022 because I know people hate the Astros because of the scandal, but here's the thing. We've been waiting 20 years for Dusty to get a ring because we all remember what happened back in 2002 with the Giants, and also 2003 with the Cubs, and now he finally got his ring back in 2022. So I'm very happy he got his ring finally,
Yeah.
and now I hope he'll go to the Baseball Hall of Fame in the next few years. I don't know if that will happen, but he's one of the best managers of all time.
Yeah, and a really cool guy. It's been fun to get to know him a little bit. He
Yeah,
couldn't come to see Darren in 23 because he was still managing, but now the last 2
yeah,
years that he's not managing anymore, he's come to see us play on a few occasions. After it warms up, he doesn't like to come to see us in April when we're playing in the
yeah,
cold weather.
yeah, absolutely. Um, what else do you do in the off season, like as for say basketball? Right? What league is that for? Basketball.
Yeah, I broadcast the University of Buffalo basketball games. They're in the Mid American
Okay,
Conference. Yeah.
okay. Anything else that you do in the off season, or that's it for
Not
the
really.
off
I
season?
work in the office with the ball club, help sell
Okay,
advertising and help our PR guy in some of the off season projects that he has. But it's a lot less
okay,
hustle and bustle in the off season, so to speak. But the basketball's fun and
yeah,
it's enjoyable to do that. Buffalo's had a lot of good teams over the years, and I've got to go on some pretty fun trips with them to some cool places that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. So that's been a good thing.
very cool. Um, do you have any advice for those who wants to get into broadcasting for baseball or any sport?
Yeah, you just got to do it. That's the big thing. And there are a lot of
Mhm.
opportunities out there now because of the internet and the ability to put streams online. So you don't
Yeah,
necessarily have to have a radio station, but even if you can't get on a stream, just practice. Even if it's just calling a game off the TV into a recorder, but you need to get reps
yeah,
and call games and try to improve and send your materials out to people and get advice about what they think you should
yeah.
do better and just hope for the best. But it's one of those things that, you just have to do it and keep doing it and get better over the course of
Mhm.
time.
Absolutely. Or maybe even uh, film yourself doing it from MLB the show. Turned out the announcer volume and do it that way on the game. Um,
Yeah.
but where can they find you on social media? And is there like uh, any like else online related that you do, like any shows or whatever that you want them to check out?
Any what?
Shows or podcast or
Oh,
whatever that you do.
yeah, I guess Twitter or X is the best place at Josh Whetzel, JoshWhetzel. I mean, that's the one social
Yeah.
media that I'm somewhat active on as far as posting things. But yeah, that'd be
Okay.
that'd be the spot to go.
All right. Pretty cool. And thank you very much for doing this podcast out here for this interview.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world. Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.
Alright, welcome back to Chilling3000 Hangouts. I want to thank Josh for doing that interview. It was a lot of fun getting to know you with your passion of baseball, your broadcasting history. It was a lot of fun, so I want to thank you, Josh, for doing that. And now, ladies and gentlemen, let's begin our interview with game show expert Jeff Williams. So let's get to that interview right now.
Hi, my name is Jeff Williams. I worked on the game show Jeopardy, among other things, and I'm here to visit with David.
Yes, indeed. And I'm going to welcome everybody to the interview segment here. And Jeff Williams here is a teacher, TV radio host, game show expert, and also a former staff at Jeopardy. So, we just went through National Game Show Month this past month for June. How did you get into game shows, and what inspired you to be part of the game show world of what you've done for certain game shows?
Well, thank you for asking, David.
You're welcome.
Frankly, I had never wanted to do anything else from the time I was about 5 or 6 years old to be worked in television, but specifically, even from an early age, believe it or not, 5 or 6 years old, wanting to host things. And I just could picture myself in that sort of situation, being an MC. I'm going to take my glasses off for a bit. MC or a host, and introducing things. So literally as a young kid, I would go in my room and pretend to be hosting things. I would create shows and host them. Puppet shows, interview shows, talk shows. We lived in a rural area, so we didn't have that many close neighbors. So this for me was a way to retreat into something that I really loved, and it gave me a career interest, which I was able to pursue as I got toward college.
Okay. And what did college help you to put your foot through the door? Because, of course, college was a huge thing before the internet, came around.
I think everybody should make the effort to get a college degree if it's something that will work for them in their future plans. It's not for everybody. I think my classes were helpful in some ways, but I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. The best thing in a business like this is experience, hands-on experience, and doing as many things as you can. And I did many things for free, especially early on. Didn't hesitate to get any experience I could on radio or TV, in front of the camera or in front of the microphone. For example, in North Carolina, one of our PBS TV affiliates had pledge drives every year that were on live television. And I was one of several people who co-hosted those. And I wanted the experience of working and being on live television and learning how that would all work. And it was a great experience. The first few times that you do it, it can be a little nerve-wracking, but the more you do it, the more you get used to it, and the more fun it is when you realize, wow, I'm getting comfortable doing this. So I did that for free. Another PBS affiliate in North Carolina did TV auctions every year, fundraisers, and I hosted that as well for free. And then when I came here to Los Angeles, I did the same thing for a couple of PBS stations in this area as well, and had worked in radio news in North Carolina at a station in Raleigh, WPTF, did radio news as an anchor and reporter, and that's where I got some of my earliest experience. However, I kind of knew that I really didn't want to be a news anchor reporter. I even got hired to be a fill-in on one of the local TV stations for their news updates in the evening. And then that was temporary anyway, part-time. So I just knew that I wanted to do something where you had to speak and sometimes ad lib and get comfortable with yourself and your microphone and your camera and the audience. And so that's what I aspired to do from early on, was to host things. And so I seized any opportunity I could. once I got here. And then I got a job working on the TV game show Jeopardy. There was a class that the UCLA Extension program offered at the time. It was about game shows. And a roommate of mine at the time said, hey, look at this. I know you're interested in game shows. Why don't you go to this? And in the class was a guy that you may have crossed paths with David, Bob Bowden. Are you familiar with that name?
I do know who he is, but never met him before yet.
Oh, okay. He taught that class that I was in, and he led it, and he had some special guests come in who had worked in the industry as producers, and at least one host, I think Wink Martindale, came to our class one night.
Wow.
Monty Hall was going to come, but it was in the middle of a Jewish holiday, so he couldn't come that night. But it was really fun. We spent weeks talking about the different concepts of what game shows are, how they work, how they're structured. And I met somebody in the class that worked on Wheel of Fortune. And he's since retired, but he was a contestant coordinator. That meant he helped pick the contestants for the show. And I said, do you think there might be a job opening on Wheel of Fortune? He goes, well, let me ask around. And there wasn't anything on Wheel of Fortune, but there was something on Jeopardy. And I seized the moment. I took the job, and it was an office job, and also going basically at the beginning was where I was running errands, picking up things for the show, this and that. But I took it because it was a way in the door. And then eventually I started helping with researching fan mail, which was a big thing because Alex Trebek, the host, the first season the show was on, he had set a policy that every single letter would get some kind of personal response from him, which I thought was a great thing. So we did that. We would research it. And usually what happened was the person writing the letter misunderstood something that was said on the show, like a part of a clue. They may have misunderstood or mixed up a word because the show is pretty fast moving. So we would respond and point out exactly what we really did say. And most of the time it was a misunderstanding on the part of the person writing the letter. It was very difficult to ever catch Jeopardy in some kind of real mistake because the show then and now is held to such a high standard of credibility. If people see it on Jeopardy, they expect it to be true. If not, the credibility of the show would suffer. So we responded to all mail, and Alex would write them back. We would write, and he would read the letter, sign it, and we'd send them a response to anything that a viewer inquired about. Even if it was just a general comment about the show, or I really liked the show, he would respond to every single piece of mail, which I thought was fantastic because not everybody would do that.
100%. It's a wealth time out of your day to do that, and also back to your saying about the mistake part with Jeopardy. A lot of people didn't have DVRs back then, and it's kind of hard to believe that they actually remembered those mistakes. But and also, we didn't have the internet back then in some of these cities, etc.
That's right. When I was in there, it was in the 90s, and I was able to help the researchers and writers by looking up information to see if we had used a certain question before. And it was the database where at the font time you just had a font on a screen with no background, really. It might be an orange font. I think it was actually. And this is going way back to the early 90s. And so, but I could type in a keyword, like let's say the question was about Abraham Lincoln, and any question we had ever done, came up. And so we could see if that had been used before. And eventually, most information gets repeated at some point on Jeopardy, but the challenge always is, how can we present this in a new way? It's something the writers always worked on. What's something new we could say about, say, Lincoln? We all know he was president. He was shot in 1865, but did you know he had a dog named Fido, for example, and his dog was the first dog ever actually photographed, first presidential dog actually ever photographed. That's kind of a fun thing you can throw into a question about Lincoln, that most people wouldn't know, but it's kind of cool and interesting and fun, and reinforces what they know, but also adds a little entertainment value by asking, including something normally that wouldn't be known.
That's pretty cool. I never knew he had a dog, so there you go. And what was the when was the first season of Jeopardy? Like, what number did you first start working on there, and what was the last season?
Believe it or not, I worked there in the early '90s, seasons 7, 8, and 9. So it had only been back on the air 7 years when I started working there, and here it is, 30 plus years later, still on the air and going great. And I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work on that show and work with a lot of very nice people. The staff was incredibly nice, easy to talk to, worked well together. I can't say enough about the quality of people we had working on the show. And everyone worked toward the common goal of presenting a good show, well done, well researched. And as I said, it was virtually impossible to ever find a mistake on Jeopardy. It was so well researched and documented, every single clue. For example, one clue that one of our research people had to research for a writer, we had researchers and we had writers. She had to find out what are the different colors of M&Ms that M&Ms makes. Well, one source she looked up and it said a certain number. But then somebody said, well, wait a minute, isn't there a blue M&M, or doesn't that mean there's one more? And sure enough, she called the company, and the company said, yes, we now have this many different kinds of M&Ms. So that was part of a clue on Jeopardy. And so research is integral to this type of show, factual, and every single question I can tell you presented on this show, or actually, we present the answers, right? The contestant comes up with the question. Was double sourced. Every single question and answer had to be double sourced. Two sources that prove inconclusively that this is absolutely right. Now, in the case of the company that makes M&Ms, they're pretty much the ultimate authority. So I imagine that was probably the only, once we spoke with the company, I'm going to say that was probably the only answer we needed, because we got it from the source, the ultimate source, the company. But normally at least two sources for every question and answer on Jeopardy, sometimes three. So I can't say enough about how thorough and complete the research was. Really a neat staff to work with.
Very cool. Do you remember any favorite jokes that happened on Jeopardy during your time, like that? During that research, like any funny moments that happened on the show when you were there? Funny
moments. Well, one of the funniest, entertaining things that I ever remember happening was Well, this is just something that happened in our office. We probably had 25 to 30 people that worked in the office. Preparing the shows, like myself, and then on the days that we would tape, there were 30 to 40 more people who worked on the crew, the technical people, the camera guys, all of those people. So altogether, 60 to 70 people that worked on the show. Well, anyway, I say all that to say that it was a small office we shared, small meaning the number of people, say 25 people or so. And one Halloween, we actually were supposed to dress up as our favorite Jeopardy person. So I came dressed as Alex Trebek.
Oh, boy.
And let's see. So what I did was I got a fake mustache, because Alex still had a mustache back then. I salt and pepper grayed my hair. And then, let's see. Oh, Alex used to have a habit of wearing bracelets, men's bracelets on his arm sometimes. So someone in the office lent me a bracelet, and he would usually wear a sports shirt, kind of like this one, and a pair of jeans when he'd show up for taping. Very casual when he would arrive. So they took pictures of all the people who dressed up that day. And later Alex saw my picture and he said to me, Jeff, that was a very stunning likeness of me. I got a kick out of that, and I was glad that he saw the humor in it because it was very fun to be Alex Trebek for a day. Sometimes we would tape promos for local stations around the country, and I think one time I appeared in one as a contestant. We were pretending to be contestants.
Yeah.
In a promo that would run on some TV station that ran Jeopardy around the country. That was pretty fun experience. And on the days we would tape, there was always a nice lunch that was catered. So we typically would start taping at around 1:00 in the afternoon, 1:15 usually at the latest. And we would tape the first 2 shows. And then we took a break, an hour break for lunch. And then we would tape the 3 final shows for that week after that. Some people may not know that game shows are usually taped more than one in a day, usually 5.
Oh, I knew that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Good. So we would normally tape on Mondays and Tuesdays, occasionally Wednesdays. So that might mean we tape 5, 10, or even 15 shows a week. Well, as a host, Alex worked maybe 45 days a year as a host of Jeopardy. So it's a very high-profile job.
Yeah.
And yet the time demands on him were not that extreme. He did sometimes go on contestant searches around the country to help search for contestants. I think he was involved with the USO, and sometimes we would have, I think, military contestants on the show, and he helped recruit those. And so he did actively help promote the show. But it's a great job, a great gig if you get the opportunity to do it, because you don't really work that many days and get paid. You get paid well, and that meant he could do other shows as well. He had no agreement with Merv Griffin Enterprises at the time that he couldn't do other shows. So he was doing, when I was there, he was hosting 3 different shows. He was hosting Jeopardy, Classic Concentration, and To Tell the Truth at one point. Came back and he hosted it for a period of time. So he was doing 3 different shows. And he was always very thoughtful on when Christmas rolled around. He usually gave us a nice gift, which is always nice to be remembered that way. Yeah. One year it was a nice silver-plated photo album. Another time it was a crew jacket. It was corduroy and it said Jeopardy and it had my name on it. So everybody got one of those. So, and on the days we'd tape, I don't know if I said it, catered lunch. Always, always outstanding. That was one of the most fun parts of the job, is when we would break for lunch. So
all together, right, as a group.
Say that. I'm sorry.
All together as a group, right, for lunch.
Yes, that's right. The contestants actually joined us for lunch, but they sat in a very segregated area by themselves, so they could not interact with anybody who might work on the show.
Yeah, because of the answers and all that.
Yes. So they were kept in seclusion to an extent. They still were in the area where we had lunch, but not allowed to interact with any of us, which is the way it is, because as you know, probably know, back in the 50s, there were game show scandals about people being prepared and prepped with the answers, which turned out to be a no-no. It was against the law anyway. Ultimately, there was a big. People can research that if they want to find out more. But anyway, so it's very important that the integrity of Jeopardy stays intact. And I'm very impressed with Ken Jennings and the job he's doing as the current host. I think he's doing a great job. I don't think anybody else could have done it the way he's done it. And certainly has the credibility. He won like 75 episodes of Jeopardy in a row as a contestant.
Yeah, amazing.
So he's a very smart guy to begin with. Yeah. So I think the show's in good hands for the future.
100%. What was it like with the back in 2021 when Jeopardy changed all of their hosts. After Trebek died. Like, what was the moment like when he passed away? On the set, and of course, how did they came up with these rotation of hosts?
I kept touch with that because again, of course, that's a big interest of mine.
Yeah.
I wasn't working there at the time, but there were a lot of people they let come in and do a week of shows or a few days of shows. There was even Katie Couric was one of them, and a number of other people. One was a football player, I think.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers.
And I believe he did quite well, actually. I seem to remember seeing him on at least one episode. So they wanted to give everybody a chance to just and see who might do it, who might be the best fit for it. So a huge loss for everybody, because Alex went through a lot of pain and suffering. I'm glad that ended, because I know that was very difficult for him and his family. And he was planning to continue to work as long as he felt good, and had told people even several years earlier, I'll do this as long as I feel up to it. I'll continue to do it. Mm-hmm. And lo and behold, gosh, he did it for more than 30 years. I think he hosted a game show longer than anybody, except then Pat Sajak passed his record with like 41 years, I think. On Wheel of Fortune. Mm-hmm. So I would describe the atmosphere among people I knew that had worked there as I kept in touch with them. A lot of sadness. A lot of people hated to see him have to go through something so painful, including myself. So it was a huge loss for everybody, because when you think of Jeopardy, you think of Alex Trebek. But I think they've got the right person now in Ken Jennings to continue on well into the 21st century. Mm-hmm. I think he's a fine pick.
100%. And how many days after Trebek died until they started taping again, or was it like the next day they had to tape again?
Good question. I'm not totally sure on that. I would imagine. I think he died in about October, November. Because I think it was pretty close. It was maybe.
It was like around Halloween or something.
Something like that, or around early November, somewhere in there. Normally, can be as much as several weeks break between the last taping and then the next taping. So I don't really know. I'm sure the offices were probably closed in memory of him. Production offices, which are on the Sony Pictures lot in Culver City. They tape both Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune now. But when I was there, we taped at a different place in Hollywood. 1040 North Las Palmas Avenue, which is used for a lot of things. It was used for some classic sitcoms back in the 60s. And so the Sony lot, where Jeopardy and Wheel are done now, was where some of your most classic movies like, Wizard of Oz was filmed there. It used to be the MGM lot, and then it became Sony Pictures. And now they also do television there with Wheel and Jeopardy on the lot.
Oh, wow. Very cool. And going on, in 10 years from now, it'll be over 100 years since that movie came out, which is crazy. What else?
Did
remember?
Go ahead.
Huh?
Oh, I was going to say, would you want me to show you my watch? About 18 months after Alex passed, his family had an estate.
It was November 8th. November 8th.
Was it November 8th? Well, thank you for sharing that. I wasn't sure. I'll put my glasses on here.
Okay.
So I bought this watch at Alex's estate sale, and there were two cases of about half dozen watches in each case. He had a number of watches, and I saw this one and I liked it, and I thought it was Very classy looking. You might be able to read the brand name better than I.
I the screen is
It's
getting,
reflecting.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm really thrilled to have it, and it's a keepsake to always treasure because it did belong to him. So
Okay.
I've really enjoyed that. And then also when I was at Jeopardy one year, well, Merv Griffin, who created Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, always had great Christmas parties, and they were at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, which he owned. And they, believe it or not, there was a drawing, and I won this watch from that.
Cool.
Thank you. So this is another men's watch that I have as a memento of my time at Jeopardy.
Okay.
I really like this one as well. So I have two really neat things to remember the show by.
What was Merv Griffin like as a co-worker of yours?
You know, we didn't get to know him too well because his office was at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills, which he owned.
Yeah.
So rarely did I even venture over there. But I did go to the Christmas party, and he was friendly and cordial to everybody.
Okay.
He was not that tall of a guy. He might have been 5'7", 5'8" at the most.
Yeah.
Very nice. And the parties, I mean, when you think of a hotel in Beverly Hills, you think of top class, first rate, and that's the way it was. I mean, there must have been 20 to 30 different choices of entrees out that day, open bar, all kinds of desserts. It was really awesome. Ice sculptures around the hotel, and some of the royalty from the game shows were there. I remember seeing Vanna White was there with her husband.
Cool.
Alex was there. Let's see. Other people, the actress named Ava Gabor, who was very close to Merv. She was on a sitcom called Green Acres. I don't know if you know of that show. She was one of the stars on that show. She was there. So it was really neat and a neat experience because I felt like, wow, this is first rate. This is class. So I really enjoyed that.
100%. And what was, I was going to get to this earlier as well. What was Alex Trebek like as a, friend of yours and all that back then?
Like as a, set? What were you, I didn't quite understand. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Co-worker and also a friend of yours back when you were on Jeopardy.
He was always very pleasant. Sometimes early on, I would take, look at my little dog who's under the table here, he's sleeping. Very pleasant guy, very nice to everybody, cordial. I would occasionally run things over to his house and get signatures. He lived in Studio City. And more on the quiet side, up close and in person.
I can imagine.
Yeah, more cerebral and quiet. Not a huge extrovert, but very pleasant. And when I first started taking stuff to his house, he lived on Mulholland Drive. And then he moved to a house he bought in Studio City and refurbished much of it himself. He was born in Sudbury, Canada, and people there are used to working with their hands. All those people had those kind of jobs where you're skilled labor, and you work with your hands. And he did much of the work himself, except for the parts he couldn't refurbish himself. Maybe some of the electrical, he had somebody come in. But much of the other, he did doing it himself, I think saved a lot of money. And so when he passed away, that house that he lived in was nearly 100 years old. Wow. Imagine, 100 years old. But since it's been sold and the people tore it down and have decided to build their own home there, which always surprises me when you got a house that's nearly 100 years old. There's a lot of history. So I'm surprised the new owners chose to do that. But that's their prerogative.
Maybe they don't want. Maybe they didn't want to get hunted by the ghosts. Probably. That would be
Yeah, it
my
was
guess.
a neat experience to see Alex on the tape days and that sort of thing. He had a wardrobe coordinator named Alan Mills,
Oh,
who coordinated all of his suits and shirts and ties, made sure they were ready for him, and made sure everything matched, looked good on camera. And so Alan Mills was the nephew of the Mills brothers, who some of your listeners and viewers might remember. The Mills Brothers was a famous African American group from long ago, from the 30s through 70s or 80s.
okay.
So he was related to them. And we had a makeup guy on Jeopardy when I was there. It was Larry Abbott. He made up the contestants. All the contestants, they touched them up with a little bit of makeup. They want everybody to look good on camera.
Yeah.
So he would do that, of course, take care of Alex's makeup. And then we had, let's see, Johnny Gilbert, the announcer, who is still announcing Jeopardy. And I believe he's 99 years old. Believe it or not. 99 years old. And now he works from home, but he used to be at the show every day on tape days. An incredibly nice, pleasant, cordial man. Can't tell you anything but good about him or Alex. It was a great team. So Johnny set the pace with his announcing, and Johnny was the warm-up guy for the audience, where, the warm-up guy basically maybe tells a couple of jokes or gets the audience relaxed so they're ready to see the show and be in the right frame of mind.
Mm-hmm. How often do you go back to the Jeopardy set nowadays?
Not in a very long time. Most of the people that I worked with there are now retiring, in the process of retiring. I think one of the writers that was there when I was there is still there. One of the camera guys, at least one, is still there, maybe more. So aren't that many people left, and they've continued to do new things every year. A few years ago, they had what they called a crew. Excuse me, clue crew. This group of 3 people that would go out to locations and do clues on camera. Like if it was at the Washington Monument, if the clue was about the Washington Monument, they would cut to that person on camera with the clue. So that was something they had added after I left. I did apply for the job, however.
I see. What other shows have you worked on?
When I left Jeopardy, I went to work for a movie production company, and they offered me a job making considerably more than I was making at Jeopardy. So I jumped at the opportunity. It was a movie company, and that lasted for about a year and a half. And that company started having some problems. So I did a little bit of freelance work on shows. I did some what they call extra work on some shows, like a show many of your viewers might remember, Murder, She Wrote. It was a dramatic show. I worked on an episode of that as a person in the background. Did those things when I could. And eventually, I was still volunteering at the PBS station, one of them in San Bernardino, hosting their pledge drives. And when someone left, someone recommended me for the job of being co-host of a local show called Evening Edition on KVCR TV. And so I was the co-host with another person, a lady, and we introduced the segments on this local news and public affairs type show. So I did that for 6 years. And then after that, someone I met there happened to be a local food critic. And his show on the PBS affiliate, the TV station, got canceled. So I called him up and said, gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that your show was canceled. He said, well, I'm doing something on the radio. Would you like to come and help us out? And I said, well, sure. So joined the show. We're doing just one segment. Originally, it was a news segment where we would kind of have fun. It was a fun type segment. And then eventually the other person who was the Food Critics co-host, he left, and they asked me to be the regular co-host. And one of my favorite segments was one where we did our own version of the news. We would, all the news stories were real, and many of them, well, all of them had a connection to food. But I looked for the really crazy ones, which there are a lot of, believe it or not, connected to food. For example, one time we had a story about a policeman who drove up to McDonald's and his order wasn't right at the window. So he pulled out his gun. So, I mean, talk about bizarre. So we would play dramatic music, like for the theme from a TV show that you probably wouldn't remember, Dragnet. Dun, 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 dun. And then there was another story about a lady who said she got up one morning and she heard what sounded like the sound of bacon and eggs frying downstairs in her kitchen. She went down there and someone she didn't know was making breakfast in her kitchen. And then there was a man who got arrested because he stole chopsticks. He stuffed his pants with as many pairs of chopsticks as he could. And he got arrested. I don't know why you would want that many pairs of chopsticks, but yeah. So crazy stories were the most fun, and we would throw sound effects in and have a really good time with it when we did that segment. I also got to do a rant of the week about current things, like anything. It could be anything, like how come TV isn't better than it is, or talk about bad service in a coffee shop or a restaurant, and just general rant. Pick one thing and rant about it, because chances are somebody else in the audience feels exactly the same way. They just don't have a forum to be able to express that. And so I was fortunate.
This is on the radio.
On the radio.
Yeah.
It was KTIE AM 590 in San Bernardino.
Okay.
And so I did that for about 6 years as well. Along the way was also teaching. I taught a class at Cal State Fullerton, a writing for TV and film class for 4 semesters. And so that was a blast to do. And as well, along the way, became a special education teacher and have worked with children with special needs as well. And currently still do that. And I'm always on the lookout for opportunities. If something came along in radio or TV again, I'd certainly seize the opportunity.
Oh, yeah. Will you ever get back to doing anything on radio, TV these days?
Currently not at the moment, but I'm thinking about, I know someone I know might know of an opening doing some radio news on the weekends, but which I might look into. It'd be kind of a fill-in news reporter on the weekend. Yeah. It's always better to be doing stuff than not. And one thing that you find when you're doing stuff like this, David, is it's a very much a relationship-oriented business. Yeah. You want to get in and start meeting people, and it's good to know, you have a network going of people who might know of something if you don't know about it. So I had some other things. Do you want me to show them on camera, David?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. This is actually a press kit that the show used when I was there to promote the show. It was probably sent out to local stations all around the country promoting Jeopardy. It says, Jeopardy, it's as much fun as you think. That was a slogan for a while, for one season. Of course, there's Alex on the cover. Inside, press releases and things. about the show, and I still have that as a memento of my time there. Now, I also have a few scripts from the show. When I say script, on the tape days, writers would be down on the stage. Well, not all the writers, but some of the writers would be who were judges on the answers and stuff when the contestants would answer. So all of them who were down on the floor, as we say it, in the studio at tables, they would have a copy of the script for a particular show. And this just happens to be the type of script that was put on this big paper. And as you can see, every single clue from this particular episode is on this sheet. Now, this is probably round one of Jeopardy. And then probably if I turn the page here, this would be double Jeopardy. And usually the ones that are, you see the boxes around, most likely are daily doubles or something like that. Okay. So the answers are there. So on the podium, Alex, I believe, up until the time he wasn't hosting anymore, always had this on his desk, a real piece of paper. I don't know exactly how Ken Jennings does it, but I believe Alex liked the fact that here's a piece of paper, here are the clues. It was something secure to have right in front of you to read the clue. And I believe he had a monitor. He could read the clue off the screen, but actual answer he could find on here. And if somebody got it right, he could check it off. But there were other people keeping score. But it's a real treat to be able to have something like that from my days and time there. Let's see if there's anything else here. That's most everything, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Did you get any scripts from Johnny Gilbert?
No, I wish I did. Golly, Pete. He read the prize copy, but also read the contestants' names and read the opening of the show. I don't believe I do. If I look hard enough, I might find one. So that's real art in itself, is reading this prize copy, because it explains the prizes that those who aren't the winner walk away with. And you want to read it well and make sure it represents the client who paid for that time, that 5 to 7 seconds for exposure, that it's well read on the air. And Johnny did a great job with that.
Oh yeah, he did.
And still does.
And I see, still to this day. I see on your Facebook they have a picture of you at the match game. Tell us about that picture.
Oh, actually, that's not me in the picture. I just picked that picture because it's a host. And
I knew it wasn't you, but
thank you. It's a favorite picture. I loved Match Game, especially the version with Gene Rayburn, which still runs on the weekends on the what's the channel? Buzzer.
Buzzer, yeah.
It still runs on there, so I put that picture up. I think they did a pilot with this guy that's in the picture, and I just put that picture up there.
And you were the one that took the picture, right?
No, I just saw it online and
okay. Yeah, understood. If you could take away, any experience from Jeopardy that you'll always remember, what would it be?
Oh, what would it be? Oh, wow. I'd say the insight of knowing how these shows are put together. It goes through every question you see on the sheet.
Yeah.
Goes through a lot of eyes, a lot of eyeballs read every question and clue. So by the time it gets on the air, there's no doubt about the factualness or integrity of the clue. I can explain a little about that process. the way it would work is the writers come up with ideas for the clues. They also would get together at least once a week and go in the conference room and read the questions that they had written that week out loud and see what people thought, the other writers thought, and see if there are multiple answers to that question, and or if there's an issue where, that could be right, or technically this might be right too. So they try to troubleshoot anything that could present a problem if it were to be used on the air. So they called that round table, is what they called it. They would round table the questions and answers as a group at least once a week when they were writing material. We had a writer at one point who came in, I bet he came in at 7 a.m. And this was his life. He loved Jeopardy. And he's no longer alive, but he passed away. And my understanding is he had written so much material for Jeopardy that they were still using his questions several years after he had passed away, believe it or not. And the producer was able to work it out so that his family got, writers get residuals, even on a game show, for stuff they have written. Work it out so his family could benefit. I think he was from Michigan, benefit his family for work he had done several years prior. But that was the massive material he had created. We had another writer on the show who wrote books about Elvis. Steve Tamarius was his name. And you can even look up his books. He wrote several. I would say he's the Elvis authority. If you want to know something about Elvis, excuse me, Steve Tamarius would be the guy, and I think he's retired now.
Okay.
Also, but that was his thing that he just loved. Everybody had their passions and things that they were really into.
Yeah.
That was what I liked. Also, is knowing how these, like I said, how everything is put together. Because once they had roundtabled these clues and everything had been decided, they would take categories and post them on a page that looks. Of course, now, being the internet age, they may do it totally differently. They would take these and post them up together. Like they would type the clues all out for the categories they decided would work along with the head writer, because there is a head writer on Jeopardy, and paste them together into a format for an actual show. And there was a person, that was her job, to coordinate all the material on the show that people had written and put it together. And then on the actual days of the show, from the pool of games, they called it a pool of games, they would decide which completed games, we call this a complete game here, because it's the whole show, would go first, which show would be second, which show would be third, fourth, and fifth during that taping day. And also the same with the contestants. However, once in a blue moon, you might see that a minister is playing the game and a category comes up like books of the Bible. Well, that's purely random, I assure you. But stuff like that did happen once in a while. The games were not tailored for the contestants themselves. It was purely at random how the games were prepared, put together, and then the contestants on tape days, they decided who would be on the first shows, the second shows, third shows. We had contestants and contestant coordinators and producers who handled that matchup.
Okay. And what type of prep work did Trebek did before he went on stage?
I think people would be amazed and also impressed to know that Alex really did not have to research anything, because our writers had done so much prep that by the time he sat down the day of the taping with the games all prepared that they were going to use that day, that everything was set. He would go over every game. He'd read them out loud, make sure he pronounced them well. But no, he didn't do research for any of the categories. If he questioned something, it would be looked up. But most of the time, he trusted the writers and knew that everything was going to be above board and well done. But if there were questions, if there was a potential problem, a lot of times one of the writers would have caught it before this point. But if he had a question, he might point it out on the tape day when they sat in the conference room and he read over the scripts when he came into the office.
Okay.
So
that's interesting. How far in the morning will he get there? Like how many hours before?
Oh, that's a good question. Usually about 9 o'clock. So from 9 o'clock until we start taping around 1:15 in the afternoon, he would have time to go over the games, relax a little, get dressed. It was a nice 2 to 3 hours. That's about a 4-hour window from the time he came in, 9 a.m., starting to tape at 1:15. Meet with anybody he felt he needed to meet with in terms of the producers or whatever. And then start taping the shows.
And you said 3 shows, right?
Yeah. We'd do 2 shows and then take a lunch break. Then after the 1-hour lunch break, we'd come back and we'd tape 3 more shows for a total of 5. And believe it or not, the show was already so well oiled. It was like a well-oiled machine that we were done by like 5:30 with 5 shows, a 1-hour lunch break. And of course, there's 10 minutes usually in between. Everybody has to go change clothes because it shouldn't look like Alex shouldn't wear the same clothes he wore yesterday on yesterday's show, because after a couple of days wearing the same suit, people at home might think, So, or the contestants, if they return, they need to have multiple clothes changes. So they would bring at least 2 or 3 changes of clothes in case they came back on the next show. Yeah. So that was something that was thought of. So starting 1:15 in the afternoon and done by 5:30, I'd say that's a well-oiled machine, because newer shows don't usually have that luxury. Sometimes they have technical problems on new shows, on new game shows that have to be worked out, and they're not all worked out at first. So there's a huge learning curve to get that all straightened out. And if you watch Jeopardy, of course, there's monitors up there with every single clue in a monitor. So someone had to think that all out technically 30 plus years ago. How is this all going to work? And how's that clue going to come up? What happens? In the old days, there was somebody behind it when the original Jeopardy was on in the 60s who would pull the card up, and the answer would be there just when they would pull the clue up.
It's crazy how they answer the questions. It's just unbelievable on how they do it.
Yeah, and things get more high-tech as we go on.
Is it true that they only do categories that the contestants are interested in?
No, not at all. Because here's the way it works to try out as a contestant. You have to take a test. Now I believe it's online, but it used to be you'd have to come in person.
Yeah.
I imagine it's probably done online now. But they would ask you the hardest of the hard questions.
Wow.
I mean, I'm talking world geography, stuff I could never answer. I mean, so the test itself had the hardest of the hard questions that you would see in the second round of Jeopardy. Mostly those kinds of questions. And that's the hard round on Jeopardy, is the second round, called Double Jeopardy. Those questions were much harder, and not many people passed the test. Yeah. If 30 people came in, you might have 5 or less that actually passed the test. Less than 10 for sure.
Crazy.
So
and that's amazing. And you do 5 days of taping or 3 days of taping?
Usually 3. Once in a rare blue moon, maybe 4.
You said Monday to Wednesday. I forgot about that.
I'm sorry.
I say you said Monday to Wednesday.
Yeah, usually Mondays, Tuesdays, and
Yeah.
Wednesdays, but occasionally Thursday, but that was rare. One time to do Celebrity Jeopardy, we actually worked on Sundays to do that.
Oh,
People that many of your audience, at least hopefully most of your audience would know who Carol Burnett is. I remember she was on our show, Regis Philbin, a talk show host, as celebrity contestants. Now, I believe on Celebrity Jeopardy, they would try to tailor the questions a little more to the interest of the celebrities. So it may have been played a little easier for the celebrities, but generally it's not that way on regular Jeopardy. They don't prepare the clues based on people's expertise or knowledge. But so we come in on Sunday a couple of times to tape those, because most of those folks, they do something else during the week. They might work on a show, be a star of a show. So Saturdays and Sundays would be the days that they would be available. So that's when we taped Celebrity Jeopardy. Yeah.
Do you have any advice for those who want to get into game shows, like we're gonna game show? Because, like, what if they are not living in California? What if they still want to work at game shows, like in another city or something? But all of them are mostly in California.
Well, that's a good question. It's really ideal if you come here. If you can put up residence here, and then you start attempting to network somehow into game shows. I would, the guy who used to produce The Price is Right, his name was Roger Dobkowitz. Have you ever talked to him? Oh, okay.
I haven't met him, but I do know who you mean.
He wrote, he was getting a master's, and he wrote a master's paper about game shows. And what he did was he sent it to Mark Goodson, who was the creator of many game shows, including The Price is Right and Match Game. He sent that paper he had written to Mark Goodson, and he followed up, I'm sure, with a phone call, and he got a job as a production assistant on the show, which is the more usually an entry-level type job. A production assistant does a little bit of everything on the show.
Yeah.
So that's how he started.
And I do recommend also people like what you did, like volunteer for free. Like, I think that is a huge step, going into. See if you can get an internship of any kind working on a show. Write, if you see names in the credits, write to the producers and see if there's any way you could do some kind of internship there, or see if they might have an opening that matches your skill set, that sort of thing. Yeah, everybody cannot do everything, as for skills. So, I mean, my passion is still working on air, and I hope at some point to continue to do some more things, maybe even hosting. On the radio show I was doing, I meant to say, we did game shows sometimes, and I would host them. We did our own version of Let's Make a Deal. We called it Let's Win a Meal. And I would host it with the listeners playing for restaurant visits. Also, we did The Price is Right. I went into a small warehouse type chain that we have here called Smart and Final. And we took a game from The Price is Right, one where you put the items in order from least expensive to most expensive. And if you get it all right, you win, the big prize. So you hope to make it all the way up. And we played, and I took grocery items from the shelves of that store, and like 6, 7, 8 items. I had them put them in order. And both times the contestant won. I was so pleased that they were able to put them in order, and we gave them a prize for that. And I hosted it. So my passion is still hosting shows, and would like to continue doing that. 100%. Other than Jeopardy, before we end this, what other game shows did you like?
Oh, gosh. Just about every one I can appreciate to some degree. Wheel of Fortune is so much fun to play at home when you don't have the pressure that those people have who are the contestants. It's really easy to sit in your easy chair at home or your sofa and think, oh, it's blah, blah, blah. But, it's a little different when you're standing up there and being the contestant giving the answers. But it's fun. And then sometimes even on Jeopardy and Wheel, you'll think, oh, I know that answer. Why isn't anybody answering or giving the answer? So that's kind of self-indulgent when you know an answer the contestants don't. That even happens sometimes on Jeopardy. It would be some trivial piece of information. I would know it, and I'd think, how come nobody knew that? It would seem like an obvious fact. So I loved Jeopardy and Wheel to this day. The Price is Right is one of those shows that's fast moving. Every 5 minutes, they're playing a different game. It's one of my favorites. I even saw it the first time it came on the air when Bob Barker hosted. I saw it the very first day. Yeah, and that's been a long time. And it was only 30 minutes back then, and then it expanded. Yep. It was the first 1 hour game show. And no one, that was just unheard of at the time to do a 1 hour game show every day. Mm-hmm. So when they started doing that, I think, originally they did tape several shows in a day like we did on Jeopardy, but then they kind of, then they went to, Price is Right went to 2 shows a day, 3 days a week.
It's now 3 shows a day, a couple of days a week or whatever. I forgot the schedule, but I know it's they do 3 shows a day.
3 shows a day? Yeah. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty impressive schedule because when Bob was there, they only did 2. So 3 a day is cranking it out pretty good.
Because I was there for one of the tapings of Price last year in December, so that's how I knew that was their schedule. 3 shows a day. I forgot how many a week. I think it's like maybe 3 days a week or 2 days a week. They do that, but that's a pretty good schedule because get them all done by way in advance and all that. Because they also have to edit them nowadays. It's not live anymore. Doing that, so did Jeopardy do like any live shows during your time there? Like, because I know it's all tape, but did you do any live shows?
Did you say live shows or night shows?
Live.
Live?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like
no live shows or live in person. No, they eventually, after I left, they started going on the road with Jeopardy and doing it in different cities here and there. So they did do that. I think they went to Washington, D.C. and several other cities. But when I was there, they weren't doing that yet.
Okay. But I was wondering that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now Price is Right does shows that are on the road, and they take it to
The Price is Right. The Price is Right live. It's a stage, so yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's other shows that I like from that era. To Tell the Truth was a great game. Do you know To Tell the Truth?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
3 people pretend to be the same person, and there's only one telling the truth, and you have to figure out who's telling the truth, who is the real person. And
the most famous one, Mr. Seymour, that everybody talks about on that one.
Which one is that?
I think it was on To Tell the Truth.
On To Tell the Truth?
Yeah. Samuel Seymour, who was an American who saw the assassination of Lincoln. So I don't know if you know that story, but he was on that. Let me actually search for. Let me search for that.
I know To Tell the Truth. Mark Goodson said To Tell the Truth was his favorite game of all the games he was involved with and helped create. Mm-hmm. That To Tell the Truth was his all-time favorite because he said he couldn't believe that you could actually prep 2 imposters well enough that they could fool the panel.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was on I've Got a Secret when Seymour was on there, not Tell the Truth. I got mixed up, but let me show you about Seymour. This was on I've Got a Secret. There. Let me highlight this. And he was able to be on that I've Got a Secret show, say that he saw Lincoln die, which was pretty
Oh,
incredible.
I have seen that. Yeah,
Yeah.
elderly gentleman who was actually in the theater when Lincoln got shot. He was about 5 years
Mm-hmm.
old. He was there with his nurse or nanny, and was
Yeah.
actually there. And
Mm-hmm.
what a fascinating thing to have experienced, an unbelievable thing too.
Yeah, that's American history right there. That's
Oh yeah,
amazing.
the fact that
I
he experienced
uh,
that.
yeah, I got mixed up between I've Got a Secret and Tell the Truth, but that's okay.
Oh yeah, and
But
I love all
yeah.
those panel shows like that. To tell the truth, I've got a secret. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what's the other? What's my line?
That's my
Is
name. Yep.
another one. Yeah, they were all
Mm-hmm.
very successful shows. And Match
Yep.
Game, I loved, was actually as a panel show really one of my favorite because
Oh.
it could get pretty rowdy, and the celebrities get pretty rowdy on there, and that was what made it so entertaining. Is they would be cross talking
Okay.
with each other, and uh,
Yeah.
it has been said since that on the tape days, even Betty White said that between shows or during the lunch break that there was probably a bit of booze, shall we say, being consumed,
Mm-hmm.
wine or booze, and
Mm-hmm.
so when they would come back from their lunch break, they would start getting much louder and much rowdier
Okay.
after everybody had been drinking.
Understood. Where can they find you on social media? And is there anything else you want to promote before we end this interview?
Oh, that's really nice of you. Well, I do have a web series called Man with a Flip Phone, and I actually play the man. It's a what I would call a dramedy. It's a show about um, a man, middle-aged man, dealing with life in the 21st century. And so I played the man. I'm basically really playing myself, but in a character. And so he's a radio talk show host, and he is about him dealing with all the craziness of life in the 21st century. And some of the things that have actually happened to me, I put into the show. Like one day I was in a restaurant and I saw this nice looking family looking down like this. And I thought to myself, well, that's really nice. They're all praying together as a family before they eat. I got closer and I realized they were all on their phones. They were all looking
Oh
down.
no.
So I wrote that into an episode because anytime stuff like that would happen, I thought, this is too good. I have to put this into the show. So more often than not, we had instances like that made for a very entertaining
Yeah.
situations.
Very cool. Well, that'll be it for this interview, and I'll be right back. And thank you very much to Jeff for doing that interview. It went longer than expected, but hey, it was a great conversation talking about our favorite memories of game shows, his background with Jeopardy, and not many other things. So, thank you very much to Jeff for doing that. And whoever's interviewed on our show, they're more than welcome to be back on our show as a guest in the future on the panel and all that good stuff. So, um, yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And we're not done yet because weekly baseball rundown. And before we get to that, I hope everybody is having a great 4th of July here today. Happy 4th of July to everybody. And I hope everybody's having a great time tonight going out, watching the fireworks wherever you are in the Pacific or Eastern or whatever in the time zone range. And I say I'm having a great 4th of July myself as well. And also, I want to say that the past 2 episodes of Chilling3000 Hangouts, the one with Regular West and our Game Show Stream Edition, was some of the most best episodes we've done this year so far. And I gotta say, this one is probably gonna be up there as well because we had a great conversation with Josh and Jeff. Unfortunately, no Hangout Session, so that may affect that as for the best episode, but with our usual Hangout Session. But hey, it is what it is, and we'll be right back to doing our hangout session next week on the 11th of July. Yes, the 11th of July. Just make sure I got that right. And folks, we'll be right back after these words because we have our weekly baseball rundown segment, and that'll be coming up right after these words. Do not go anywhere. Do not choose that channel.
Are you ready for the ultimate entertainment experience? Then welcome to the Network 3000.
We've got you covered with all of the variety of content such as our weekly programs like
Chilling3000 Hangouts, the Popcorn Panel Podcast, Sports Shows Daily Sin, Breaking the Chains, and more.
We also got the game shows, game plays, play-by-play reactions, blogs, and other fun stuff
that you can only get here on the Network 3000. Subscribe today.
We are here with the weekly baseball rundown. I'm here with my compatriots. To my immediate left, we got David. Right underneath me, we got Josh. And to my kitty corner to the left is Kurt. We have a lot of baseball headlines to go through. But the first and most important one is history was made last night at Dodger Stadium. One of the most recent and only the fourth to do it. Clayton Kershaw gets his 3,000th strikeout. For a guy who's played 18 years and he hasn't thrown 200 innings in almost a decade, not too bad for a guy who's supposed to be, and I think he's this generation's Koufax, but he stayed healthy and he didn't throw his arm out. Now, to you guys, and this is something that I was talking to David and Josh about. Who do you think anybody gets to 3,000 strikeouts now? Because that's been a hot topic recently is, does anybody? It's like 300 wins now. Does anybody get up there anymore? But Josh, I'll start with you because I know you'll have a bit of a talk about it, but does anybody get to 3,000 strikeouts in the modern era now?
Well, modern era, it's hard to say, but I think actually 3,000 can be attainable depending on how long the pitcher's been in the game and where they are. I mean, it all depends who the pitcher is and where they're at. But 3,000 is I think a reasonable number. 2,000 would be better, but I think 3,000 could be attainable depending on where the pitcher is in their career.
Okay, I agree with you. But the last three to have made it have all been pitching on more than 20 years now, and the most recent one was Max Scherzer, and he's had a litany of arm problems, as well as Verlander, who's now 42. He's in his 21st year, so that's why when I think of big numbers, I think 4,000, which is never going to happen again, and then 5,000, no one's going to even come close to. Never again, not close. Someone will strike out 300 times in a season, but that'll be historic in a whole different fashion. Kurt, you're next. 3,000, is it possible in the future or no?
Possible, not likely. I'm looking at some of the numbers right now. Chris Sale's the next one on deck. He's 36 years old, but you're right. He's had a litany of arm injuries too. Still, he's 472 away, so maybe 2-3 good years he could make it. We'll see. Next one after that, Garrett Cole, same issue. He's 34. Looking further down the list, maybe Aaron Nola, who's at 1831. But it's going to take some work. You're going to have to see a guy who, again, is going to be pitching into his 40s and still able to make 25 starts a year, pitching six innings to start in order to get maybe 175 strikeouts a year over the course of 15 years or so. That's a big ask.
It is, especially now where I was looking at Kershaw. He has not started more than 30 games in a long time. His most recent start where he just struck out the 3,000, where he got his 3,000 strikeout, he barely managed to get to 100 pitches. And I will say this with the utmost confidence. I think Chris Sale could do it. I agree with you, but these pitchers aren't going 6 innings anymore. They ain't throwing 100 pitches anymore. A lot of these guys are being taken out because of the analytics approach, and that's the way I see it. It's not going to be it's not the hard thrower's error anymore. It's whether or not you can survive with the soft stuff and not get taken deep every other at bat. David, you're the youngest one here, so I expect a little bit of, I'll give you a little bit of levity with this, because the last three guys to do it are all almost pretty much being put out to pasture, if not sooner than later. So what do you think?
I think there's a 50-50 chance because, like what Chris said, Chris Sale, next step up. If Chris Sale pitches for like 10 more years, he could do it. I mean, not everybody's going to be Rich Hill when they pitch into his late 40s and whatever, because, Rich Hill, he's out of his mind, keep coming back for no reasons. Even though I like the guy, he's pitched for us, but not everybody's going to be Rich Hill or whoever and pitch into his deep 40s and all that. Nobody's going to touch that, especially nowadays where there's too many Tommy John surgeries ever since the pitch clock happened. So, to me, I would love to see Chris Sale come back, but from his current injury right now and try to get to that 3,000 mark. But if Chris Sale can't do it because of his injuries, then that'll be the decision, making point for me that nobody will do it again.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that play that Sale made where he dove on his stomach and hurt himself, unfortunately that's taken him out till August, mid-August at the earliest now. So he's going to miss the All-Star break. He's pretty much going to miss 7-8 weeks because of a play where he decided to. I like pitchers being athletes, but in this situation, not everybody needs to make that play.
And with me being a Red Sox fan, I know from his, my experience watching him keep getting hurt, like getting, hit in the face, bicycle, like he needs to be careful of himself. And I really like the guy. I met him. He's the one that made that 2018 World Series championship happen. But it's all about the health. He cannot beat that same 07 anymore.
I totally agree. Mm-hmm. And next up, I am going to talk. I talked about this a little bit last time with fan interference. I won't go over it much, but the fan in Arizona did get banned for the rest of the season. Not like other fans who've done something stupid and gotten banned for life. But I think as a season ticket holder, you should be held accountable for what you do. I'm not going to ask for much added on from you guys because this is just consequential from last week. But I am going to think about this next up because I read about this recently. As the players get older, most of the time, we lost Josh, but he'll be back in a moment. Carrying on, but pitchers making comebacks in their career after injuries or whatever else. That is what I'd like to talk about now, because we have a guy in Chicago right now, and Josh knows all about him. He's a big lefty, about 250 pounds, and he hasn't allowed a run yet, despite not pitching since 2021. He's the one I'd like to think about when I think of people making comebacks after being away for a while. Drew Pomeranz has not been scored upon in 27 2/3. And even further back to 2020, in like 80 innings since then, he's given up 7 runs total. His ERA since then is 1.07. But in your guys' opinion, who is your guy who came back after missing, whether it be from injury, some kind of life-threatening issue? Who is your guy who came back to baseball and was successful at least? I have my guy, but I'm not going to go first. I'm going to have Kurt go first because this is something I feel was right up his alley. A guy who played baseball, then had to miss substantial time and come back, and then came back and did it well. Go ahead, Kurt. You're on mute, buddy.
Man, I got to stop doing that. Okay.
You're all right. Go ahead.
There was a guy who played for the White Sox in 1968, 1969, Lee May's brother, Carlos. What happened was he was on Army Reserve, and there was a training accident. He got part of his thumb blown off. Now, I can't imagine how, and it couldn't be replaced. I can't imagine how, as a baseball player, you could still play with part of a thumb missing. But he managed. He learned. And he still had a pretty solid major league career. Lasted maybe about another 8-10 years or so. So actually, yeah, and a couple years in Japan after that. So that's one I would throw out there. That was one of the first thoughts I had. More recently, let's think about it. Zach Wheeler was out 2 full years due to arm injuries. I can't remember. It might have been Tommy John. It might have been something else.
Yeah, it was Tommy John, and then he had problems with his shoulder afterwards. So you're right.
And I didn't think after 2 years he would ever be the same guy, and he wound up being a better one. I'm sure that's the Mets' big regret is letting him go, because he's had a much better career than any of the other guys who of that big starting 5 they had in 2015. So we'll have to see if that keeps up, but he certainly made himself an outstanding pitcher in a tough stadium. Citizens Bank Park is not an easy place for a pitcher.
No, not at all. And for Mr. May, that's pretty incredible. And for Zach Wheeler, because the one I was going to discuss is actually a former Met. He played for the Blue Jays, but I'm going to save that one for another time. But the one I think of most is a cancer survivor. He played for the Giants. I was about to
say it.
It's not Liam Hendricks.
It's
not Liam Hendricks. Andres Galarraga, they called him the Big Cat. He played for many, many years. He played for almost 20 years. But he returned in 2000, a part of the Braves. And they were playing at Turner Field. He comes back from cancer, gets chemotherapy and everything else, comes back, has an all-star season, and plays until 2004. And then even after that, he's a September call-up. His cancer returns. He comes back, plays 7 games, hits well in the 7 games, falls 1 home run short of 400 for his career. But Andres Galarraga is one of the best athletic big men I've ever seen play baseball. And a cancer survivor at that's even more crazy. Josh, ball player who's missed time, whether it be a pitcher, hitter of any kind, that came back and played just as well.
If we're talking pitcher, I have 2. Drew Pomeranz, of course, for this season is very good, but I have 2 pitchers in mind with this. John Lester and Kyle Hendricks. Because poor Kyle Hendricks a couple seasons ago, he just wasn't having it. He had injuries, and it sidelined him for a long time. And he came back and the next season and just put together one of the best seasons I've ever seen a pitch before he went to the Angels, unfortunately. But John Lester had a lot of adversity also, and former Red Sox, and he's done. I've seen that man do very interesting things over the last couple of years. When everybody thought he was washed up when he got to the Cubs.
Yeah.
I would never say he's washed up, because I think, and the time he was with the Cubs, he was just as good as he was with Chicago, as he was with Boston.
Amen.
Even though he went on to play for St. Louis and Washington, 200 wins as a pitcher. And even funnier, he couldn't even throw to first base. He had the yips so bad mentally, he couldn't throw over to first. And he used to throw his glove over to first base. But cancer survivor, turned out to be a massive power threat for the Chicago Cubs. Nobody would have thought.
He was.
And I love a pitcher who can rake. Pitchers who could hit, that is a big part of your team. Now, David, being the youngest one here, you don't have the variety of options the 3 of us have. But let's hear your version of best player who missed a significant amount of time.
I have 2. One is Liam Hendricks because he was a very popular pitcher, had cancer, and Tommy John surgery, which is unreal for him to come back from. And unfortunately, he's been struggling this year. He's on the IL right now, I believe. But, with him going through all that, it's just very, difficult for anybody to go through like something like that. Coming back to the game from battling cancer and then get Tommy John surgery. That is just horrendous in a tough way for anybody to go through something like that. But I'm glad he's hopefully on his way back. I don't know what his status is right now with the IL because I haven't seen him pitch in a while in Boston, but we'll see what happens. But for my second pick, I'm going to go Jacob DeGrom.
Yeah.
Because he's been out of the game since early 2024. Kurt, am I right on that? I know you're a Mets about, I know you follow him with the Rangers, I assume. But you're on mute again.
Yeah. Kurt, you're muted.
You're muted.
Okay, I don't know why I'm doing that because there's nobody in this room with me. Anyway, DeGrom's 37 years old. He was out for most of 2023, pitched 6 games that year, and pitched 3 games the year after that. He hasn't. Okay. This will be the first year, assuming he makes 3 more starts, will have made 20 starts, even 20 starts, since 2019. He's had a pile of injuries. But he's hung in, and he's done well. So
yeah.
Could very well be the starter at the All-Star game for the American League, and he's in line to be comeback player of the year.
Yeah, and like he has had 2 Tommy John surgeries, one with the Mets, one with Texas. He still was able to get that World Series ring with the Rangers, but here's the thing. He signed a contract extension that blew up everybody when he signed that contract because everybody thought he was going this place to that place or coming back to the Mets. But he went to Texas, but in his first year, got Tommy John surgery just a few games in. But he was still able to get that World Series ring because, according to the MLB rules, you only need to play in one MLB game, not a spring training game, but one MLB regular season game. So he was still able to get that World Series ring, but still has to pitch in the postseason for them yet. So hopefully that'll happen this year for him, because that'll make him automatically comeback player of the year.
He has the career record actually, despite him not pitching very often in the last 7-8 years. The K per walk is how many guys you strike out for every guy you walk. He strikes out 5.37 batters for every time he walks somebody. That's how great he is. He struck out 1,766 batters versus just 329 walks in his career. So DeGrom, he's what I consider like not a Maddox type, Koufax. Where Koufax's peak was so high, but his arm quit on him. They said he had to have surgery, and when they went and checked his elbow, it was so destroyed at the age of 30, he was medically forced to retire. And when I use that term, it makes you think of a guy like Prince Fielder, who had to have 2 neck fusions. And he was forced to retire. He was crying at his press conference because he loved the game so much. Finished the same amount of home runs as his dad with 319. But it kind of makes you wonder, how can't you be romantic about baseball because you got guys like that having to step away from a game you love so much because of these debilitating injuries.
Another person I just thought of that we should give flowers to? Terry Francona.
Right. Yeah, he's gone through hell and back to get better, especially him, because he's not the only manager who had to step away. Ron Washington wasn't feeling the greatest earlier this year either, and I can only imagine what that must be like to be just a baseball player in general, because the one story I think of the most, and this happened 20 years ago, and he eventually got a second chance. His name was Adam Greenberg. I don't know if you know who that is. I think Kurt might know. Kurt, you're muted. I can't hear you, Kurt. I'm sorry.
This is what happens when you try to multitask. No, I don't remember Adam Greenberg. I'm like, is that the guy on ESPN? But that's Mike Greenberg.
2005, he comes up for his major league debut against Fatino de los Santos. I believe he was pitching for Florida. Josh will know who Adam Greenberg is, I'm sure.
Help me out. I had to re-log on.
So Adam Greenberg only had one major league plate appearance. And the reason why he only ever had one was because he got drilled in the head with a pitch. That was his only plate appearance. He took a 95-mile-an-hour fastball to the side of his skull. Helmet fell off and everything. He's on the ground holding his head. Fast forward 7 years later. Miami, the team where he ended up having his worst moment of his life, calls him up. October 3rd, 2012, Adam Greenberg gets another plate appearance.
Man.
He goes down on strikes, but he got something that nobody can take away from him. Another major league at bat. Even after getting drilled in the head.
Yeah, that doesn't happen too often with that kind of injury.
No.
Yeah.
He had a horrible concussion. They're saying he's lucky he didn't fracture his skull with that because of how bad it is. But for one final topic.
I actually have one more point. I'm sorry because.
No, go ahead, David. It's open forum right now. I'm not stopping anybody from sharing. It's open forum. Go ahead.
Derek Jeter.
Oh boy, that's.
He was trying to get his 3,000th hit, but
are you talking about where he tore up his leg in the playoffs in 2012 or 2013?
Yeah, and then it took a long time for him to get to it. 3,000. I'm only saying it because that was his journey to get to 3,000 hits.
Because I like you, David, I'll allow that. But honestly, I think Derek Jeter is a very, and I know a lot of people get pissed off when you say this, Derek Jeter is one of the most overrated infielders I've ever seen. All those gold gloves are just medals. I wouldn't say participation trophies for a shortstop that was so bad in his position.
However, Manfred said it about the Astros mistake. Like, that's what that is.
No, you want to know, before I go off on a tangent on David for saying something, bringing up Derek Jeter around me, but no, I think about best and worst fielders now. The best fielder at their position and the worst fielder at that position. Because there's plenty out there. Like Jeter gets called the best player at his position. But there are players, even pitchers. A pitcher has the most gold gloves out of any position, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's Greg Maddux.
Man.
355 career wins, multiple times. I think he won 4 Cy Youngs in a row in the 90s, throwing 93 at the fastest. He was not a hard thrower, but he's the one I consider to be the best fielding pitcher, and he could hit too. But the worst fielding pitcher, John Lester by far.
I would go along with you on that one.
I've covered pitcher a little bit,
but I can't remember.
Just any position, best and worst fielder. Kurt, since you're right here, I'll ask you: best and worst fielder at any position besides pitcher.
Well, I loved Ozzie Smith growing up. I mean, he was one of my favorites. I gotta go with him as best, although I'm sure there were others. Let's go with most overrated. It drove me crazy when Steve Garvey was winning, was getting awards for how wonderful a fielder he was, especially in the late 70s, the early 80s, until people started figuring out that basically his range was about a foot to either side. So there were a lot of balls that would just bounce through that he could have gotten. So it was kind of annoying.
That I agree with 100% because Garvey was a first baseman. He was part of one of the longest tenured infields with Ron Say, Davey Lopes, and Bill Russell. I think it was Bill Russell. Yeah, he played. Yeah, because when I think of Russell, I think of the guy who played and won all the rings with Boston, but not the same guy. But no, you're right. First base is a very hard position, but for Steve Garvey, he didn't deserve much recognition. Josh, best and worst fielder. David, I always let you go last because I want you're the youngest. Okay. You're the youngest, and you're my boss, so I let you go last, okay? Josh?
This one's actually a hard one for me because, I mean, when I look at fielder, I kind of think of prima donnas, you know what I mean? At their position, that they're overhyped in the league. The first one that comes to me is overhyped and Yankee fans are going to kill me for this, but Alex Rodriguez.
No, that's fine. Alex Rodriguez he was good, but he was not great. Brooks Robinson, he was not.
Exactly.
So you have Alex Rodriguez as your most overrated fielder.
Overrated, and let me see. Best in their position. Being a Cub fan, I kind of want to go Anthony Rizzo, but I've seen better than him. I mean, he's good, but he's not.
I give you Rizzo because of that play in the stands at Wrigley Field, where he climbed on the brick wall and reached in. He
climbed on the tarp for that. For that. But I mean,
most players wouldn't think. So
but he's a first baseman that will go get it if need be. So I mean, I'll go with Rizzo for the best for his time in the game.
Yeah, and I give you that one because, like Kurt already said, Garvey was not a good first baseman, but first base in an area like Fenway Park, they have a lot easier time. But when I think of a harder place to be playing first base, it's not like Wrigley Field. It was the Coliseum in Oakland where you had to be a good first baseman with all that foul territory and everything else.
Yeah.
But no, both of those are
absolutely
great. Both of those are great choices. That's why fielding is definitely important. Mm-hmm. Then again, when I think of Steve Garvey, I think more about slick fielding first baseman like Keith Hernandez, who deserved better than getting stuck behind Garvey every other year. But I digress. David, your turn.
For the best?
For the best and worst fielders. Doesn't matter the position, just in general. Best and worst fielders, any position, anytime.
Willie Mays for the best.
Oh, you can't go wrong with the say, hey, kid. And that's coming up on 74 years now with that catch. Vic Wertz hits that long drive. No one expects him to catch it. And it's become synonymous.
19-time All-Star. And I'm looking at some of his stats right now. And I believe 12-time Gold Glove winner.
He's up there with Griffey as far as I'm concerned with outfielders.
And as for the worst, I'm going to do a funny and a realistic one. For the funny, Babe Ruth. All he does was hitting. That basically was I don't see anybody talk about his fielding.
He was not a great he actually won, I think, one Gold Glove, but I don't think there was such a thing as a Gold Glove back then.
Yeah.
But Ruth was, let's say, no such thing as a Gold Glove, but
yeah,
his defensive metrics, he had one season where he was really good, and that was in 1923. That was 1923 where he had a 1.2 defensive WAR. But again, when a guy's hungover and has like 17 hot dogs in his stomach, I don't expect him to be good on defense. I expect him to be holding his ass, excuse my language, but try not to crap his pants with that amount of food and beverage in him. But go ahead, David.
I was right.
Yeah, you were right. He's not. When you have a negative defensive WAR, they're not looking at that because he was the best hitter. It's just the fact that he was a pitcher for the first 5-6 years of his career. That's why they don't care.
Yeah, but for my realistic one for today, I'm gonna go catcher, and I know he was an All-Star last year, I believe, but this year he's horrendous. Connor Wong.
Oh God, yeah. Because I'll say this very, very nicely. I trust a bigger bodied guy to block the ball. Yeah. I trust a smaller bodied catcher to be able to be agile. Catching is one of the best positions in baseball to critique athleticism. Not outfield, not infield. Catcher. You have to be prepared to throw a guy out at second base. And I know one of the guys, and they had there was three of them in their family, the Molina brothers. They're one of the best catching trios of all time. And I read the book on them. They wrote a book about them, Yachty, Jose, and Benji. All of them came, and their dad was this great semi-pro player when he played. But when he would come home after work, he'd go play baseball, and he'd bring his three sons along, Yachty being the youngest. And if you think about it, Yadier Molina is the best of the three because he had the longest career. But they all won rings. So that's why I think catching is one of the hardest positions, because you had to be prepared for years to take foul balls off the mask, foul balls off your body, block balls, and have bruises and everything else. That's why Johnny Bench was so good at what he did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Catching is one of the most demanding positions in baseball.
It's not just his fielding; it's his stacked up in hitting. He hasn't had an RBI since last September, or extra base hit, one of those two.
So he's approaching Caleb Joseph territory. Caleb Joseph went entire seasons worth of
Alex Verdugo is a better player defensively than Connor Wong, and that's. And from my experience,
that's even sadder to say because they got him and Wong in the same trade.
Yeah, and that's why Alex Verdugo played great defense in right field at Fenway. That's a very hard to position at Fenway. I'll give him a lot of credit for that, even though his hitting was up
here's
and down.
One that here's one stat that I know all three of you don't really know, and that's catcher's ERA. It's called SERA. CERA. Catcher's ERA is what a catcher does behind home plate to make their pitchers look good.
Yeah.
If a pitcher has an ERA, it's the earned runs allowed. That's because of what his fielders don't do behind him. That's why there's fielding independent pitching. Without your fielders, you're either good or you're really bad. But catcher's ERA is based off pass balls, the ability to frame, the ability to throw runners out, the ability to block a baseball, no wild pitches.
Yeah.
Give me a catcher who can catch a knuckleball pitcher and stay healthy, because this isn't going to happen again. Varitek was one of them. Varitek is one of the best catchers, and I don't like Boston. I don't like the Red Sox. Give me Varitek. Give me Gary Carter.
Yeah.
Give me one of those guys. They call them lunch pail guys. They bring their lunch to work. They bring their lunch pail to work, and they put on their mask. They put on their catcher's gear, and they say, "Boss, I'm going to go sit back here for 9 innings, and I'm going to give you the best called game I can." because that's what a lunch pail guy does. They come to work, they do their job, and they're ready to go the next day. I know we're running a bit long here,
Also,
so
another great catcher, Roy Caponetta.
Roy Kemp. He's not messing with me right now. He's just making me smile with the fact that Campanella was the epitome of a good catcher. He just ran into the wrong time. That's the problem, is he never gets in that car crash. I think he, even if he's not paralyzed from the waist down, best catcher of his era. He's around in the same era, unfortunately, as Yogi Berra.
Yeah.
On the side of each rivalry, no less. You got Dodgers, you got Yankees. I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. But Campanella was great for what he was, and he was on the.
Yeah.
He should have been much more if he doesn't get into the accident. But we're going on 35 minutes here. We're running long a little bit, so I apologize. But this was wonderful talking about. David, if you have anything else.
I'll ask you guys a question after we're off the air, so we can help these out.
This was another great episode, just talking about in general the victories in sports, the small ones, the large ones, and everything in between. Mm-hmm. But you never want to be the worst player at your position.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you, Dante Bichette.
And Connor Wong.
No, not Connor Wong. Dante Bichette had the worst defensive season, and he had 35 home runs and 100 RBIs. He was such a liability in the outfield that he had to go back to the American League the rest of his career after he left Colorado. He was so piss poor in the field. He ended up playing for Boston in his last 2 seasons. That's how bad he was. But I appreciate you guys coming on again. I know normally we don't go this long, but thank you so much for watching this weekly baseball rundown. And for me and the rest of these guys, have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Good night.